Okay, people, it's June 1st, 2016. What I've been thinking about lately is obviously about Uncle John, right? Every day, people. And I'm like, okay, he's either one of three places. He's either still at his sister up on the island in Shawnigan Lake, locked away in the country, or he's been moved to a care facility now, long term, because his sister got tired of looking after him, basically. And we know that in July 2015, he was sick, and he had been hurt, and he had been sick for 3 months. So pretty much from the time that they released him from the Victoria General Hospital, and he moved into his sister's house, something happened where he got hurt, and he got sick, and he stayed sick. But he, right? And they took the phone away from him, and they hung up on me. And of course, I've been busy, people, you know, out in the field, as Uncle John would say, mostly in the yard, just trying to hold down the fort, okay? It's not easy. You know, it's a big yard, and it's a small house, and it's congested with a lot of people, and, you know, it's got some maintenance issues, which are now, some of them are, the plumbing is going to be taken care of very soon. So I'm really happy with that. I'm going to ask the plumber about this drainage problem out in the yard, and if, you know, next door is affecting it running into here, like a river, making my fire pit turn into a pond every now and then. So in the meantime, I'm thinking about Uncle John and memories. Because you have to remember, people, they tried to wipe out his memories. He wasn't allowed to remember the kids. Remember his sister? Oh, they're not your grandchildren. You're not his grandchildren. 23, 30 years later, 31 years later, he's not your grandfather. Okay, so he's sitting somewhere, or he's dead. That's the third option, right? And of course they're not telling me, because they're just doing what they want, right? And but assuming that he's alive, and let's just say he's sitting in a care facility now, because personally I think that's where he is, right? And, you know, people are talking to him, and he's getting in touch with himself and his own memories, right? I'm talking about Joan and all this stuff. And as soon as he gets into the last 4 years of her life, on her deathbed, holding her hand, with me in the lunchroom, working on the non-profit books in an old care home. Seriously, when I took Uncle John to the care facility on the night that Joan died, on the day that Joan died, the last day that she was alive, and he held her hand and sat there for a few hours. I sat in their lunchroom with my non-profit books, and I worked on the books, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. So there was really nobody around, right? Except for the nurses and whatnot. Because Uncle John sat with Auntie Joan for several hours, right? And then we left, and then she died. Right? And he's sitting in his care home, and he's allowed to talk about Joan. Yeah, I held her hand. I remember Joan when Joan died. I remember Joan when Joan lived over in Vancouver, and, you know, they used to go for walks, and Uncle John would push Auntie Joan in her walker because she had OCPD, right? Like that lung disease. So she couldn't walk very much. So she'd sit in her walker and smoke, and he'd push her. That was one of the reasons Uncle John kind of deteriorated in the last couple of years of his life, because she was walking him to death, because she always had him outside walking, and walking was, you know, a hit and miss. Too much walking was not good, and not enough walking was not good. There had to be a middle line in there, right? So he's sitting up in the care home, and what is he saying? Being that they've damaged his brain so much and made him feel so bad for loving the kids, you know? Brooks, Sierra, ShaMay, Marcaine, Tisha, Andre. That's six kids that he loved and that were there for him every day. And it's funny because I was just talking to my youngest daughter, I think it was one of my daughters, talking about how, like, Joan had it good. Auntie Joan had it good. You know, she came over from the mainland, moved into a house full of people, right? Because John was a pack animal. That's why he liked being with us, because he liked running with the pack. So anyway, Joan moves in, and she was more like a lone wolf, but beside that point, she liked being doted and looked after, right? And she got that. She got that from everybody in the house. Everybody in the house. Some more so than others, right? Point is that she got it. And John was there for her when she died. The kids and I were there for her when she died, and prior to when she died. So now Uncle John's sitting up in the care home, and you know, he's talking to whoever he's talking to the staff, or you know, he's talking to the residents, or he's, you know, he's talking to his extended family that comes by every now and then to visit, right? You know, check up on the money. That's what they're doing, people. They're just checking up on the money to see if it's, you know, collecting interest. Right? And he starts talking about Joan, and then he mentions Tisha's name. Oh yeah, Tisha would bring me and stay with me, or ShaMay would, Tisha and ShaMay would bring me and stay with me, and you know, and Marcaine did this, and you know, oh no, you're not allowed to talk about those people because those people don't exist. They're not part of your memory. You know, they're insignificant. It was just a hotel that you moved into for 23 years and decided after a while that you just didn't like it anymore and you fucked off. So there is no Tisha, there is no Marcaine, there is no ShaMay, there is no Andre, there is no Judy. None of those things exist in your memory. Can you imagine how confusing that would be for Uncle John sitting up in a care home right now talking about the last 4 years of his life with his wife? And he has to omit his larger family, his larger immediate family, just to appease an extended family that disappeared for basically years and ignored him for years until they decided they wanted his money. And they knew that they could just go in there and scoop it up and control it, right? By any means necessary, you know, doping him up, making sure that he couldn't walk, you know, making him feel guilty for wanting to come home, making him feel guilty for having an immediate family that he actually loved. Like, he must be in torment. I mean, like, it's like, this is like torture what they've done to him. Because if he's sitting up in a care home right now, being told by some staff member, it's bad enough that the extended care family, the extended family, oh no, don't talk about them. They're not your grandchildren. No, we only listened to you call them your grandchildren for 23 years when you went back and forth to come visit us, and we were just being polite with you, just like we were being polite with you with your wife. We didn't like your wife because, you know, she was a pukeaholic, you know, and when she wasn't doing that, she was binging, and when she wasn't doing that, she was going in and out of the mental institutions, but we just tolerated her because, you know, you wanted that for a wife. Right? That's basically what they did. At one point, years and years and years ago, they told John to divorce her. Yes, he came to me. They want me to divorce her. They're telling me to divorce her. And I'm like, no, stay married. Just stay married. You've been married for 25 years. Fucking stay married. Right? And he took my advice. And in the end, he got the bragging rights of saying that he was married for 45, 50 years or whatever it was before she died. And she got to have a marriage in the last 4 years of her life by moving over here and having a family help her to have a marriage. Because John couldn't do anything by the time she moved over here. But that's John's memories, because John was there for her. Not only was he there for her, but he had a family helping him to help her. Uncle John had a safety net. And it provided a safety net to Auntie Joan. And now he's sitting up in some fucking care ward being told that he can't talk about that, people. He can't talk about walking with Joan, you know, pushing her in her walker and the things that they were doing while she was living over here, you know? Going out to the garden together, holding hands like they were young. And Joan liked to throw herself. So, get to the garden, she threw herself, and they both fell down. And then they came into the house, and they told me about it, and I had a fit. I'm like, are you guys serious? Why are you falling around in the garden? Oh, but it was fun. It was like when we were young, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but still, you can't be walking off to the garden and flying into the garden, the two of you. You guys are old. This was in 2009 when we lived at that shanty shack. It wasn't here. It was at the shanty shack. It freaked me right out. But that's his memory. He got to do that with his wife in the last 4 years of their life as a marriage coupled. And now he's being told by whoever that he can't remember those memories. He can't remember those memories, right? He's not allowed to remember them because they include the kids. They include me. They include Andre. He's not allowed to remember those things, people. Because if he's not allowed to remember the kids, how is he supposed to separate the kids from Joan in those last 4 years of his life? Are they going to sit up there and say that he completely forgot about the last 4 years of his marriage life with somebody that he loved for almost 50 years? Sure, their relationship wasn't perfect, obviously not. But in the end, they stuck it out. And they had help. Because Uncle John wasn't stupid. Because his family sure in the hell wasn't helping him. And that's why he left. He created his own family that helped him. Who in the end helped his wife. And now the family that didn't want to help him are telling him that he can't remember the times that he had that I'm talking about right now. Because they don't want to accept the fact that he had grandchildren. They don't want to accept the fact that he has a great-grandson. They don't want to accept the fact that he has another daughter. Maybe I'm not adopted legally in paper so I can run around and I'm his daughter. That's why I'm going to lock him away under key. Right? Debbie Duncan. Adopted daughter. The official legal adopted daughter. The one that disappeared and never showed up until she could cahoot with her aunt to rob years and years and years, to rob people. Years and years and years and years and years of memories from Uncle John. And to put my children's self-esteem at risk for the rest of their lives because they got to cope with the loss of Uncle John. So memories. What gives these people the right to take away Uncle John's memories? Right? Like I said, he's not allowed to remember how he got to the care facility to spend time with Joan in the last year of her life. Never mind on the day that she died. As I'm working on the non-profit books, waiting for it to happen, and just giving Uncle John that time with his wife. Well, she's looking at me, going like this, saying, look after John. She told me to look after John. She told me that she knew that John was going to be okay because she knows I had been there for him for all those years. And in the end, I was there for her. I was there for her. My kids were there for her. We were there for Uncle John, and Uncle John was there for us. So I'm tormented. I'm tormented for Uncle John, just imagining what it's like for him sitting up in this fucking care ward that they probably stuffed him into by now. And he's just not allowed to talk about, oh, I remember when Tisha did this, or he used to always say, they're always good to me. They're always good to me. The kids, everybody is always good to me. Because they were. We were. We were always there for Uncle John. If he needed something, we'd help him with it. He had his own relationship with the kids. Remember, he used to do the morning shift. But those memories have all been taken away from him because he's sitting up in this care ward and they're saying, oh no, you're imagining. You need to get off that topic and let's talk about this topic over. Let's talk about airplanes now. We're not going to talk about when you used to get up in the morning with the kids and get them ready for school, or you used to walk Marcane to school, or you used to walk ShaMay to school, or you used to walk Tisha or ShaMay. Well, actually all of them people. He walked all Brooks. He walked Brooks to school, Sierra to school, Marcane to school, ShaMay to school, and Tisha to school. He walked them all to school. And he picked them up. But he's not allowed to remember those memories. He didn't make an investment into those kids. Right? They're kind of painting him like some fucking pedophile. Think about it. Oh, those aren't your grandkids. Well, if they aren't your grandkids, what the fuck was he around them for all these years? Tell me. If you're going to be around kids for 30 years and not classify yourself as a family member, what you lurking around in the background with? Is that how they want to paint their brother, now that I'm thinking about it, as some freaking lurking pedophile that just hung around this family for all these years just to, do whatever, get whatever, and then up and fucking disappear? And then sit there and not talk about all those years like it's some dirty fucking secret? Huh? Just another one of those things to write down. Because that's kind of how they're painting him. Like some fucking pervert that was just around all these years, hanging around and lurking. And then just disappear. But the thing is, he didn't just disappear, people. He was medically kidnapped, and he was reprogrammed to not talk about his life. He wasn't allowed to talk about his life. They tried to force on his memories when he was sitting up in some hospital at 9 years old in a cast because he had purse disease like that for 2 years with his legs from the hip down. That's the state that they brought him back into. Back into that living in a hospital. Because he had that. That's why he had, in part, bad legs. Right? That's where they took him back to. And they made him stay there. Because he's not allowed to remember the last 31 years of his life. He's 77 now. He's not allowed to remember the last 31 years of his life. Everything before, after, the last 31 years, he's not allowed to talk about. Right? Because that's his dirty pervert secret. That's what I'll call this video. The pervert secret. They painted him as a fucking pervert. But it's Duncan clan, so why should we be surprised? Sitting up in some care home, being told that he can't talk about his immediate family of 31 years. Because it's too painful for his extended family. It's too painful that they couldn't control him in the last 31 years of his life. tell them what to do. So, anyway, so much for memories.